Hello, I'm Shakeeb, a cloud support engineer here at the AWS office in Northern Virginia. Today, I'm going to show you how to use an interface virtual private cloud endpoint to access an Amazon API gateway private REST API in another AWS account. Let's get started.
Let's say we have two AWS accounts, account A and account B. Account A is a requester account that contains the interface VPC endpoint. Account B is the target account that has the API gateway private REST API. To access a private REST API in another account through a VPC endpoint, complete the following steps. Create an interface endpoint in Amazon VPC. After you log in to the AWS Management Console in Account A, open the VPC console. In the navigation pane, choose Endpoints. For endpoint type, choose Create Endpoint. For endpoint type, select AWS Services. For service name, search for Execute API. Select the API gateway service name that includes com.amazonaws.useast1.execute API. Note, because the VPC endpoint is specific to the AWS region, the private API and VPC endpoint must be in the same region. Under Network Settings, for VPC, select your VPC. Under Additional Settings, select Enable DNS Name. This turns on private DNS. To use this feature, make sure that Enable DNS Resolution and Enable DNS Hostnames are turned on in the DNS settings of the VPC. Note, when you activate private DNS for an interface VPC endpoint, you can't access API Gateway public APIs from your VPC. For subnets, select the subnets where you want to create the endpoint. Note, it's a best practice to select multiple subnets in different availability zones. This makes sure that your interface endpoint is resilient to potential availability zone failures. For security group, select or create a security group that allows TCP port 443 inbound HTTPS traffic from the requesting resources IP address range or security group. This is the security group of Amazon Elastic Cloud Compute instance. For policy, select full access. Choose Create Endpoint. After you create the interface endpoint, copy the VPC endpoint ID to associate it with the private API that we will create in account B. Also, copy the public DNS name to access the private API through this DNS name from the Amazon EC2 instance later. Create an API Gateway private REST API. In account B, navigate to the API Gateway console. Choose Create API. For API type, under REST API Private, choose Build. Enter an API name and description. For endpoint type, select Private. Under VPC endpoint IDs, enter the VPC endpoint ID from account A and then select Add. Choose Create API. Configure the resource policy. In the API Gateway console, under your API, choose Resource Policy. Select Create Policy and then enter the resource policy that allows access from the VPC endpoint. Replace the VPC endpoint ID with the one that we created earlier. Set up the method and deploy the API. Under your API, choose Resources. Create a new any method under the root. For the integration type, choose Mock. Choose Create Method. Choose Deploy API. Under Stage Options, select New Stage. Enter a stage name and then choose Deploy. Copy the private REST API's invoke URL to access from the EC2 instance in account A in the next step. Test from account A. In account A, launch an EC2 instance in the same VPC as the VPC endpoint. The security group that's associated with EC2 instance must have a rule that allows TCP port 443 outbound HTTPS traffic to the VPC endpoint's IP address range or security group. It must also have an inbound rule that allows SSH traffic on port 22. Connect to the instance through SSH. From the instance, use curl to call the private REST API through one of the following four methods: private DNS name, Amazon Route 53 alias, public DNS name with host header, public DNS name with x-API GW-API-ID header. If the connection is successful, then you receive a 200 OK response. And now you know how to use an interface VPC endpoint to access an API gateway private REST API that's in another account.
Thanks for watching and happy cloud computing from all of us here at AWS.